What a weekend it has been for Opendoor and the Open Army. Every time we think the story can't get any bigger, something else happens that reminds us just how much momentum this company and this movement are building. The latest updates out of New York have only added fuel to the fire, and this weekend feels like the moment where all of the pieces start to come together. Let's start with Eric Jackson, because in many ways he's become the voice and the face of this movement. Only a couple of weeks ago he had around 30,000 followers on X. Now, in the span of days, he's passed 100,000. That is not just growth, that's exponential growth. And it hasn't happened because he's been chasing clout or pushing gimmicks. It's happened because the Open Army has rallied behind him, amplified his message, and helped turn Opendoor into one of the most talked about stocks in the market right now. That kind of organic growth is the clearest proof you can get that this is a movement with energy and conviction. People are tuning in not just because they want to make a quick buck, but because they see something transformative happening and they want to be part of it. And if there's one thing that validates that conviction, it's the decision made by Kaz Nejatian. Let's not forget, this is someone who was number 2 at Shopify, a $200 billion company, widely seen as the heir apparent to take over as CEO one day. And he walked away from that to lead Opendoor. That's a decision you don't make lightly. You don't leave one of the most powerful positions in global e-commerce unless you believe what you're stepping into has even bigger potential. Kaz clearly sees in Opendoor the chance to build something that not only rivals Shopify's success but potentially exceeds it. And he's not alone. Keith Rabois and Eric Wu, the co-founders, are back on the board. Rabois as chairman, Wu bringing his founder's DNA, and both of them fully aligned with Kaz on the vision. That's a level of leadership firepower that's almost unheard of in a turnaround situation like this. Jackson was right to point this out. The alignment of Kaz, Rabois, and Wu is not just symbolic. It's practical, it's cultural, and it's transformational. Kaz brings the operating and product discipline, Rabois brings the capital and the investor network, and Wu brings the passion and history of a founder who knows the ins and outs of this company better than anyone. Together, they're not just patching up a struggling company, they're rewriting the playbook. And that's why so many in the Open Army believe the best days of Opendoor are not just ahead of us, but closer than most people realize. Now, on top of that, we're starting to see some really creative thinking around how to handle the short sellers. This weekend Jackson floated 2 interesting ideas that caught a lot of attention. The first was about shareholders directly registering their shares so they can't be lent out to short sellers. This is what's known as doctors, and it's a tactic that gained traction during the GameStop saga. If enough shareholders do this, it effectively starves the short side of ammo, making it harder for them to maintain their positions. The second idea was even bolder, the company itself issuing a warrant dividend, which would force shorts to cover and make it incredibly expensive to remain short. Now, whether or not either of these ideas actually gets implemented, the fact that they're even being talked about shows the Open Army is playing offense, not defense. They're not just waiting for the market to dictate the story, they're actively shaping it. And this is what really separates Opendoor from being just another meme stock situation. Yes, the retail movement is loud and passionate. Yes, there's high short interest that could create a squeeze. But unlike the meme stock era, this isn't about fighting over a failing business model. This is about retail investors aligning with founders and leaders who genuinely believe they can create something world-changing. And that's why cultural voices matter here. Jackson made the point that getting someone like Drake involved is far more powerful than having another hedge fund take a position. Hedge funds are looking to flip, to trade, to extract short-term profit. Drake or other cultural icons bring long-term conviction and mainstream legitimacy. They see themselves not just as investors but as part of the story. They amplify it to audiences who might never have thought about Opendoor otherwise. That's why it matters. It's about embedding the company in culture as well as finance. We've also seen chatter this weekend about Chamath Palihapitiya possibly re-engaging with Opendoor. And that's proven to be divisive among shareholders. Some see Chamath as a visionary who helped take Opendoor public and could bring capital and connections if he got involved again. Others see him as someone who cashed out early and might not be aligned with long-term retail investors. Both sides have valid points, but what's undeniable is that people are talking about it. And the fact that this debate is even happening shows that Opendoor has re-entered the radar of some of the biggest names in tech and investing. That can only be a positive in terms of visibility and momentum, even if not everyone agrees on whether Chamath should be welcomed back. Meanwhile, Rabois himself has been actively stoking excitement. He's been posting online about his vision for the company, even sharing a picture of Bill Gates' book Hard Drive, a subtle but powerful reminder of how transformative companies are born and built. It's the kind of symbolism that rallies people around a mission. Combine that with Jackson's non-stop posting, the Open Army's memes, and Kaz stepping into the role officially on Monday, and you've got an atmosphere that feels electric heading into next week. We also can't overlook the broader market context. The Federal Reserve meets next week, and there's increasing speculation about a rate cut. If that happens, it would lower mortgage rates, stimulate housing demand, and directly benefit Opendoor's transaction-driven model. That's a macro catalyst that lines up perfectly with the micro story happening inside the company. It's rare to get that alignment: passionate retail, leadership overhaul, cultural momentum, and macro tailwinds, all at the same time. And this is why Eric Jackson has said repeatedly that the target of $50 a share is not some far-off dream. It's a milestone that could be reached much sooner than people expect. With short sellers still holding nearly a quarter of the float, every uptick in the stock puts more pressure on them. And as we saw this week, when momentum takes hold, this stock can move 20, 30, even 80% in a single day. That kind of volatility is terrifying for shorts and thrilling for longs. And when you add in conviction that this isn't just about a quick squeeze but about building the Amazon of real estate, it becomes a story that people want to be part of. So where does that leave us as we wrap up this weekend? It leaves us with a stock that has a new base around $9 after an extraordinary rally. It leaves us with a leadership team that is arguably stronger and more aligned than at any point in the company's history. It leaves us with a retail movement that is energized, creative, and growing by the day. And it leaves us with short sellers staring down the barrel of a setup that could trap them badly if momentum continues. The Open Army is not going away. In fact, it's only getting louder, stronger, and more organized. And with Kaz stepping in on Monday, the next chapter officially begins. If this week was about setting the stage, next week could be about delivering the first act. The future of Opendoor is being written right now, not in some boardroom behind closed doors, but in real time, in full view of anyone paying attention. And if you're watching closely, the message is clear. This is not a stock to dismiss as hype or a fad. This is a company in transformation, backed by founders who believe, led by a CEO who left one of the biggest tech firms on earth to take the reins, and supported by a retail movement that refuses to back down. The shorts thought they were betting against a broken model. Instead, they find themselves up against one of the most energized investor bases in the market and a leadership team with the vision to actually pull it off. That's why this weekend matters. It's not just about price action. It's about conviction, momentum, and the sense that Opendoor has crossed over into something bigger than just a stock chart. The Open Army is writing a story that could reshape how people think about real estate, investing, and even community itself. And as we head into next week, with all these catalysts converging, the stage is set for what could be another explosive chapter.